Have you ever wondered, if you met the right person, would life suddenly feel lighter, more beautiful, and less of a struggle? Not because everything's perfect, but because you wouldn't have to guess, overthink, or constantly fight to keep something going. Or maybe you're in a relationship where you're always the one initiating. You text first, you ask how they're doing, you keep the connection alive, and when they go silent, you start to worry not because anything's wrong, but because it feels like you're the only one still trying. Deep down, you feel like you're chasing them. You expect them to show up on special occasions. You wait for a sweet message, a thoughtful gesture, anything that makes you feel seen. But here's the truth. That energy of chasing, of hoping, of needing them to do something so you can feel loved, it doesn't come from selfishness. It comes from lack. And what you send out from that space of lack will attract more lack. People who also expect, who also need, and don't know how to stay unless they're being fed emotionally. So what if you flip the question? Instead of, why don't they give me more? Try asking, what kind of space am I creating for them when they're around me? Do they feel lighter, freer, more like themselves when they're with me? This video isn't about how to keep someone. It's about how to return to your own center where love begins not with demand, but with gratitude. Not with chasing, but with presence. If you're on a journey of conscious love, subscribe to the Love Equations, a space where you don't learn to hold on tighter, but to become the kind of presence that love never wants to leave. Part 1 title: When you start appreciating the small things, you stop demanding the big things. Many people believe that love has to be grand. Gifts on special occasions, perfect words at the perfect time, romantic gestures that prove they're still being loved. But true love isn't always loud. It often hides in the quiet, in the way someone looks at you when you don't speak, in how they stay beside you even when nothing needs to be fixed, in the small things that don't shout but show up. When you don't yet appreciate the small things, you'll always feel something is missing. You'll keep asking for more, not because you're wrong, but because deep down you still believe, if they love me, they should do more than this. But when your energy shifts from needing to noticing, from expecting to appreciating, you realize love was already there. You just weren't looking from the right place. You begin to feel grateful for that short message that says, I'm thinking of you. You appreciate the quiet way they refill your water without asking. You start seeing the value in their steady presence, not because it's impressive, but because it's real. And when you start to see that, you no longer demand big gestures to feel loved, because the love you feel now doesn't come from outside action. It comes from the inside-out shift in your presence. When your eyes become grateful, your heart stops feeling empty. And from that fullness, you don't chase love, you radiate it. Part 2, title: When you stop demanding their attention, you begin to see what you truly need. You've probably thought, if they really love me, they'll be the one to reach out. You wait for a message. You hope for a phone call. You wish they'd suggest something for the weekend, anything that makes you feel remembered. But when you go silent, so do they. When you stop initiating, the connection seems to fade. And in those quiet moments, you start to wonder, am I truly important to them? Or have I just been trying not to be forgotten? Here's the turning point. When you stop chasing their attention, you don't just see how they respond. You finally begin to see what you are really needing inside. You're not really asking for a message. You're asking to feel like you matter. You're not really needing a phone call. You're craving a sense of connection that makes you stop questioning your own worth. But what if that craving isn't even about them? Most people don't truly know what they need. They think they're asking for affection, attention, or consistency, but what they're really longing for is clarity, to feel enough, to feel seen without having to constantly prove their place in someone's life. When you pause the chase, you create space to ask deeper questions. Do I really need them to show up? Or do I need to show up for myself first? And from that space, you realize it's not about needing someone to reassure you. It's about learning how to stop outsourcing your value to someone else's response. When you stop demanding their presence, you start reclaiming your own. You move from seeking love to becoming love. And from that clarity, the people who are meant to meet you will. Part 3. When you stop trying to hold on to someone, you start holding on to yourself. You once thought, if I stop trying, they might leave. So you gave more. You stayed soft. You compromised. You thought love meant holding on. So you gave up pieces of yourself just to make sure someone else wouldn't walk away. But somewhere along the way, you got tired. Not because they changed, but because you slowly stopped recognizing who you were in that relationship. When you're constantly trying to hold on to someone, you end up letting go of the one person you need the most, yourself. You stop checking in with your truth. You forget what you value, what you believe, what makes you feel safe, because you're so busy asking, am I still good enough for them to stay? And the hardest part is this. The more you try to keep them close, the more you drift away from the very energy that made them love you in the first place. Your ease, your lightness, your grounded presence. But something changes when you stop chasing and start listening. You begin to notice what feels right for you. You start honoring your own rhythm. You become aware of what you're giving and what you're giving up. And from that clarity, you don't need to prove your worth. You simply live in alignment, and the people who are meant to stay, stay. Not because you held on to them, but because your presence gave them something they didn't want to lose. You stop holding love like a fragile thing. You start holding yourself as someone who is whole. And from that place, you no longer hold on out of fear. You hold space with grace. Part 4. When you bring value, you become the place love wants to return to. You once asked, why aren't they as present and engaged as they were before? But maybe the better question is, am I still offering something meaningful in this connection, or am I just waiting to receive? When you come from a space of constantly needing, you unintentionally become a weight even when your love is sincere. But when your energy shifts from expectation to contribution, from lack to presence, something beautiful happens. You become a space that feels safe, expansive, and alive, the kind of space someone naturally wants to return to. Not because you're perfect, but because being around you feels like home. You don't need to impress. You don't need to overgive. You simply become someone whose presence nourishes someone who listens without judgment, holds space without pressure, and allows the other person to be fully themselves. And when someone feels free to be themselves in your presence, they begin to trust you not just with their time, but with their heart. When someone feels lighter, clearer, and more peaceful in your energy, they don't drift away, they naturally draw closer. Because being with you feels like coming back to themselves. True love doesn't need force to stay. It grows in the quiet consistency of who you are when your presence is the value. And from that fullness, you stop fearing loss because you know the one meant for you will always want to return to where they feel most seen, safe, and alive. Closing true. Love doesn't exhaust you, and when they stop reaching out, you no longer need to chase. If you've ever felt like you're the one always keeping the connection alive, always initiating, always trying harder so things don't fall apart, then maybe it's not because you love more, but because somewhere along the way, you forgot how to stay connected to yourself. Because true love doesn't ask you to chase. It stays, not because you try harder, but because you've become the kind of presence love naturally wants to stay with. When you begin to appreciate the little things, when you stop needing constant proof, when you stop trying to hold someone and start holding your own center, when you live in the energy of giving rather than expecting love, no longer feels like a struggle, but a quiet companionship between two people who choose each other with clarity. True love is not about clinging or proving. It's about becoming. It's about embodying the kind of light that reminds others what it feels like to be at peace when they're around you. True love is when two people meet at the same frequency, no one needs a chase, because both choose to walk toward each other in mutual respect. If you're on a journey to love consciously, to stay grounded while opening your heart, subscribe to the Love Equations, where you don't learn how to make someone stay, but how to become the kind of soul that love never wants to leave. Closing, true love doesn't exhaust you, and when they stop reaching out, you no longer need to chase. If you've ever felt like you're the one always keeping the connection alive, always initiating, always trying harder so things don't fall apart, then maybe it's not because you love more, but because somewhere along the way, you forgot how to stay connected to yourself. Because true love doesn't ask you to chase. It stays, not because you try harder, but because you become the kind of presence love naturally wants to stay with. When you begin to appreciate the little things, when you stop needing constant proof, when you stop trying to hold someone and start holding your own center, when you live in the energy of giving rather than expecting love, no longer feels like a struggle, but a quiet companionship between two people who choose each other with clarity. True love is not about clinging or proving. It's about becoming. It's about embodying the kind of light that reminds others what it feels like to be at peace when they're around you. True love is when two people meet at the same frequency no one needs to chase, because both choose to walk toward each other in mutual respect. If you're on a journey to love consciously, to stay grounded while opening your heart, subscribe to the Love Equations, where you don't learn how to make someone stay, but how to become the kind of soul that love never wants to leave.